A single mother who is working multiple jobs, going to school, trying to raise her family, meets a single, self-centered, wealthy man whose biggest concern in life is whether or not his staff will be available when he calls them. Fate brings these two back together after a very complicated and difficult first meeting. And then from there, the hijinks ensue. So, does Overboard deliver a fun and lighthearted romantic comedy or rom-com that will leave the theater goers smiling? Or is this film as forgettable as other films that we've already forgotten about? Which ones? I don't know. I've already forgotten them. Roll that intro. Surprisingly, this film over-delivers on what's promised in the trailers. Yes, this film is at its core about two strangers who are trying to make a marriage work, but it's also not. First, we have Kate, played by Anna Faris, who is a struggling single mother who's working multiple jobs, going to school, trying to make sure her daughters are taken care of. All of this aside, she still turns out to be a pretty terrible person. Don't worry, we'll get to that in a minute. Next, we have Leonardo, played by Eugenia Derbez, and he is a completely self-centered, wealthy individual who, by the end of the film, kind of breaks free of that lifestyle. Then we have all of the side characters that have important roles in this film. Her family, her mother, her kids, her co-workers and friends. Then we have his family, the crew that maintains his yacht. There is a lot going on in this movie. However, as I just said, there's a lot that's crammed into the story, which actually works to the detriment of the film as a whole. Since there are multiple stories running at the same time throughout this film, dealing with his family, with his relationships, her family and her relationships, the focus of the story continuously shifts, which was a problem for me. There's an entire subplot that runs through this film dealing with his family. As we find out, his father is dying, he's on his deathbed, he's sick, and his daughters are trying to figure out who's going to take over the business. The father says that it should be his son, even though his son is kind of living the life of luxury and is very much just kind of like a playboy who really doesn't take responsibility seriously. He's got a daughter who helps him run his business, who feels she should take over the company, and then he has another daughter who's basically just the heart of the family. However, the majority of time this subplot takes up on screen felt completely unnecessary, because it doesn't really do much to drive the main plot forward of two strangers meeting and falling in love. So yes, while there is a lot in this second story that could have made its own film, such as, family going behind each other's back, lying, political maneuvering, backstabbing, and then there's also some humor with these family members as well. That's all kind of secondary and it should have just been removed from this film. And again, it might work on its own in its own separate film, but for this one in particular, I thought it was a distraction that pulled away again from the main focus, which should be these two characters who were strangers meeting and falling in love. For a lighthearted rom-com, this film is actually surprisingly dark. When you consider the fact that he falls off of his boat and gets amnesia, his sister finds him and then says that's not her brother and leaves him, and then fakes his death to try and take over the family business, that's pretty dark. Now add a complete stranger who already is upset with him and convinces him while he's in this state of amnesia that they're married, they have children, and he works construction. But that's not all. She also convinces him that he has to sleep out in the shed on a little cot, because that was part of the plan that he and his sponsor came up with if he ever relapsed back into alcoholism. Yes, she also convinces him that he's a recovering alcoholic. So in general, she's a pretty terrible person. Her character seems to, for the most part throughout the film, have zero to minimal regard for what will happen if or when his memory actually does come back. What will be the ramifications of all of this deception? And as it would play out, his memory does come back, and it comes back very abruptly. Now, I'm not sure if it was meant to be comedic, but it literally happened so quickly right at the end of the film that I did laugh out loud because it was ridiculous. Overboard is playing at your local movie theater right now, and I am going to recommend that you skip seeing this film on the big screen. At best, this is just an okay movie that I think you might enjoy once it's available on your preferred streaming service, or you can rent it at a Redbox. As I stated, this film just does too much and has a difficult time trying to stay focused on the point of the film, which is two strangers meeting and falling in love. Again, even though one of these strangers is a very terrible person. Have I mentioned that she also tells him that the kids look different and don't look like him because he's impotent, and they had to go use other means to actually get her preggers. So it's literally just one terrible lie on top of another that would make any normal man just walk away from the situation and leave her entirely. Love covers a multitude of sins, and this film really puts that belief to test. Now, I did find some of the interactions between the characters working with Leonardo very charming and believable, and in fact, that was probably the highlight of the movie for me. In this film, there are characters who watch a Spanish soap opera on TV, and this film actually does a nice job of kind of tying that back into the film over and over again, all the way to the ending. But even that is not enough to save this film from being a predictable, poorly focused story about two strangers meeting and falling in love and overcoming lots of obstacles. And because of that, it's getting 0 high fives from this guy. Overboard is playing at your local movie theater right now. Go see Avengers: Infinity War.